This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Good evening. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Aww, we are in the swing of the holidays, aren't we, Rob? Rob's over there playing the holiday music. It is the most wonderful time of the year. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree is all lit up. You've seen it, right? You've seen that tree, right? It looks awesome. There's people crawling all over the city. They're shopping. They're looking up. They're bumping into you as you're walking down the street. Don't you hate when that happens? They're all looking up and they bump right into you. But you know what? There is no more beautiful place to be at Christmas time than New York City. You can't get around, but it's okay.
There'll be parties for hosting, marshmallows for toasting.
I love this.
And caroling out in the snow.
And before you know it, it'll all be over. Anyway, welcome to another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club, our gift to you, helping you find your way to figuring out how you're going to publish that book you've always wanted to write. Come on, we're coming to the end of another year. You got to write it now. We have countless examples for you every single week. And this week, we begin with Ben Shannon, who decided to share a very personal experience, a very big secret he kept for a very long time. This, my Page Publishing Book Club fans, is a true story, and it sounds like something right out of NCIS. Take it away, Ben.
It's about a drug deal that went bad. I was staying in Florida down in Paradise Lakes, for the wintertime. And I'd go for a walk started walking with a neighbor, and he walked down through the subdivision, and then two Rottweilers come barking at us and jumping up at the fence. And I told him, I said, I ain't going to walk down that way anymore. And I don't think you should. He didn't listen to me, and he got ripped to pieces. But anyway, so I started walking down across the street and down to a two-track and went back and dead-ended. My neighbor told me, he says, there's wild boars and pigs back there, and they're having their babies. You got to be careful. And then I come back from there and decided to go another way. And I went back down the other way, and I'm sitting down there at the end of this thing, and along comes a car roaring down through there. I couldn't believe it. Fancy car like that coming down there. I hid behind us in the bushes and the trees. This car made a U-turn and was pointed out, and another one comes in a little bit later. They both roll their windows down, and one guy says, "You got the stuff?" And yeah. And they pulled out a briefcase with money, and he opened it up and showed them. The other guy says, "Here's the other stuff," I assumed was dope. The next thing I know, the one guy that was with the other guy, he was hiding in the bushes with a gun. He comes flying up through there shooting, and the next thing I know, the whole thing just blows up. Anyway, I didn't say nothing about it at the time because it was too dangerous. Anyway, they ended up with a bunch of dead people there and wounded people and me. I was shaking like a leaf.
You didn't call the cops?
Yeah, no, I didn't call nobody. The neighbors did that. There's neighbors 150 yards or behind it, through the woods and swamp and then the subdivision back there. And they heard the shots, and they called the cops. But I picked up a bag that was full of you-know-what money, and I hid it.
You hid it?
I hid it, yeah. And they found the dope. I didn't want no part of that. Anyway, the main reason that I wrote the book is to try to break up some of these gangs and stuff, feeding this stuff to kids in high school and you name it.
How old were you when this happened?
That was way back. I was in my 30s probably. And
did you ever talk to the police, or did you ever turn in the money?
Oh, yeah. The police were over every day bugging me, wanting to know where the money was, and you know where it is. And it's all in the book, and it's pretty thrilling.
Well, why did you wait so long to tell the story?
I don't know. I really don't know. I guess I didn't want to get involved in them. I didn't want to come out with it right off the bat and have them suspecting that I'm the one that found the money and all this and that. So I decided to shut up about it.
So this was how many years ago? 40 years ago?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, back in the 60s.
The cops eventually left you alone, and this thing just kind of blew over?
Well, they've caught the whole pile of them.
Oh, okay. They brought down the gang that was running the drugs.
Yeah, they did. And I turned the money over to them.
What are you hoping to do with this book?
Sell it.
You want to clear your conscience? You want to help kids? Or
Yeah, really. I'm hoping some of these kids would read some of this kind of stuff and know what goes on. You see these young guys. For instance, I had a kid that worked on my car here just lately, last year or so, and I noticed that he's skinnier. Or you could, skinnier. Where you could put your thumb and forefinger right around his ankles, and his teeth all rotten out and all that. And then I wondered what caused it, and then I found out that it's methamphetamine.
Yeah.
So, they don't know what they're doing to their lives and their families and the whole bit, And these kids in school, high school kids, they're very vulnerable to that kind of stuff because, they're impressionable. And some guy looks like a cool dude, and he talks them into, hey, man, you got to try this, and so on and so forth. And the next thing you know, a kid's hooked.
Yep, it's true.
And that's the kind of stuff that I thought I might write this book and get people more aware of it. Mainly kids.
All right, Ben, you know what? I'd like to think a story like this would make a kid think twice before getting involved in drugs. And it's one of those things you never know. It just may. All right, next up, we have another true story, a story Larry Mills has been wanting to write for decades. It's called White Child Slavery, and it hits home, doesn't it, Larry?
Well, it's about my mother and father, probably more about my father. He was born in 1880 into a rather probably rich for the day family. They owned a plantation. They had many slaves. I think they had 2,000 before the Civil War, and they had 80 after the Civil War. But for whatever reason, I was not able to determine from my father that they used to beat him and make him do the slaves' work. Whatever they were doing, he was part of the slave crew. And that started about 6, and he put up with it, fought it for about 3 years. Then he ran away from home, and it's kind of his life after he mostly ran away from home and what he went through, and living on the streets of Birmingham, Alabama. Early on, his parents sent his brothers to find him, and he was able to, not be found. So a family, a couple boys found him on the streets and told their mother about him, and they asked him to live with them in a boarding house. And then he went to work in the mines, the coal mines in Birmingham when he was 9. Worked there till he was 18. The reason he left was he had a terrible mine explosion that killed his 2 friends, the 2 boys. And my father was ill with the mumps, and he wasn't working that day, at night, actually. And they were all killed, and he was on the rescue team. No one survived the explosion, so it was a body recovery of all the miners. I don't know how many, but I'm thinking it's around 18 to 24. And he found his 2 friends that had befriended him 9 years before when he was living on the streets of Birmingham, and he cleaned them up best he could and brought them out of the mine. And his adopted mother, the mother of the 2 boys that were killed, asked him not to return to the mine, so he didn't. He respected her request, and so, his trek around the United States, and he worked for a short time in a foundry, and that didn't work out for him. And then one of his brothers that had been responsible for him being a white child slave contacted him and asked him to come to South Texas, Brownsville, to help him operate a saloon. He went there, and there's quite a bit of activity what they went through at the saloon. It's 3 different bars, one for blacks, one for Mexicans, and one for whites, and all the crazy things they went through there, if you can imagine, around 1900. Then he went to the oil boom in Oklahoma in 1900, worked there in 1923, developed a refinery with partners, and one of the partners got in debt through gambling and wanted to murder the other partner. There's 3 of them. My dad figured out if he was asking my dad to murder the other partner, he was also asking the other partner to murder my dad. So he left town, went to Kansas in a refinery, and then met my mother, and I was born. And there's quite a bit of actions and activities and happenings in Coffeyville, Kansas. Later on, he passed away, and It's an amazing story.
It is an amazing story, Larry. And what's really amazing is that you remembered all these stories that your dad told you. I mean, Larry's dad died when he was 18 years old, and he said he just could not rest until he wrote this whole story down. So more than 50 years later, he's finally made this story of survival into a book. Great job. Our next author was a physics professor at Cal Poly on the central coast of California. Keith Stowe tells me most of his books are college textbooks, but not this one, right, Keith?
This one is about a little girl. It's sort of made for preschoolers. And it's about a little girl who goes to sleep thinking about the wonders that she'll see in the morning when she wakes up and the sun comes up and reveals all those little things for her. And it's, of course, based on my own the fact that I have a granddaughter. Marianne and I have just one grandchild, and she's just, of course, as every grandparent knows, your grandchildren are just the cat's meow. They're just perfect little people, and, of course, we just have one. She lives nearby, 10 miles away, and her parents both are working parents, have careers, and so we got to see her a lot in the preschool ages. She'd stay with us for periods of time, and it was very pleasant. Got to know her very well.
Don't you love it? Everything is so new to them and so exciting, and they get so, they're awed. And, just to have that wonder is awesome, and so you kind of try to capture that in your book?
That's what I did, you betcha. Quincy always liked to go exploring. To her, I think her grandmother was the cuddly one. When she'd stay overnight, she'd always want to sleep beside her grandmother. Me, maybe, but her grandmother for sure. But she always wanted to go exploring. She could hardly pronounce that word when we first started writing the book. But, when the adults are together talking about things, she'd come over to me and say, exploring. So we'd go out and look at whatever we could find. If it was in the town, we'd look at the store windows and go into the store to see what's there. If it was out here, we'd go out and look for bugs and beetles and cobwebs and trees and flowers, whatever we could find, little trails of ants, whatever. But she liked to go exploring, and so I sort of wanted to capture that in the book. And I want to, all three of us, Charlotte, Marianne, and I, we all want to help the child notice the spectacular the display of magic that's outside everywhere you go. It's way beyond your wildest imaginations. The magic out there, each little piece, even the tiny ant, is way beyond what the world's greatest magician could ever imagine making. And it's just a myriad of just spectacular miracles out there. And we adults tend to take them for granted. And through Quincy's eyes, I could see that everything out there was sparkling and brand new and really fun and interesting and magic. And so I wanted to sort of capture that and have other children, I should say we. I was the whip. I was the guy that wrote most of the verse, and I'd write just all kinds of verse, and then and our artist Charlotte, who is a good friend of ours, would sketch up. She loves to sketch. She sketches in her spare time. Would sketch up all kinds of things to go with the verse, and some things that didn't go with the verse. So sometimes the sketches were so great, I'd say, "Hey, I'll write a new verse for that." And Marianne was sort of the idea person. Why don't we do something on this idea? And she would be the critic. She'd say, "Oh, that verse stinks. No, throw out that one. That was no good. But this one is okay if we just change it this way." So that's the way we sort of worked together. And I, being sort of the whip that wanted to get everybody going, I just wanted to capture that. We adults take everything out there for granted. I want the children that read this book to realize that even adults see everything out there as just pure magic, just spectacular magic.
Oh, this is the second edition, by the way, of Morning Magic. The first one, Keith tells me, was focused on, local wonders and, things that people who live in California could relate to. And he says all those copies were given away, so he had to write another one. And this one, he changed it up a little bit. It's got more of a global appeal. So who doesn't love the wonder of a child? Who? Thanks, Keith. Uh-oh, Mr. Music tells me. It's time to take a quick break, and when we come back, if you own a co-op or if you're thinking of buying one, have we got some news for you. Don't you go anywhere. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything: copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099.
Welcome back to the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini, along with Rob Barrett's my fabulous engineer. Rob, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention you at the beginning of the show. That's because I got so carried away with my Christmas music. This is what happens. Thank you so much for sticking around. Anyway, if you live in the New York metro area, you probably know what a co-op is. Robert Dragati deals with co-ops and the people who buy them every single day. And there's a huge difference between condos and co-ops. And after working with people for a long period of time, it came to him that there's probably some things people should know about that they don't. So he wrote Your Mortgage Co-op Closing. Why, Robert? Why?
You know why? Because it's dull and boring.
Oh, well, there you go.
Mortgage closings. Nobody zeroes in on closings. There's books about. I retired from the mortgage business after 30 years. I'm retired now. You see how I spent my retirement?
Yeah, you don't look retired to me.
Over the years, I find that the people they do not really know what they have. They don't really know. Like, they're looking at these forms for the first time, and I would say, but you signed these once before or twice before. No one told you what they are. You don't know what you're doing. What's the purpose? So I just wound up to be unable to help the people. It's involved specifically to the closing. Most of the people think it's over as soon as the bank says you're approved, you can close. Now they go to the closing. So what happens at that closing? Borrowers and their attorney, the sellers and their attorney. It's a co-op. This book is specifically for co-ops because, co-op is not deeded property. And people use the word wrong. They say mortgage on my co-op. Well, there is no such thing. But the terminology is confusing to people. And sometimes people come in and it's like happy hour. But I'm going, oh my God, do you know what's going on here? You know what you're signing? The attorneys have a lot to do. And sometimes there's a little too much chatter in there. But you can see sometimes attorneys cannot explain as much as they want to the clients. And really, just as a little insight as to what actually goes on inside that closing. What
is the most significant difference between a co-op closing and a condo closing?
It's real property. So a condo is real property. A single-family home is real property. A co-op is not real property. In a co-op, you're not buying your unit. Everyone says, I own a co-op. No, you don't, unless you own the whole building with 92 co-ops in it. You purchase shares of stock in a corporation. The shares of stock in the corporation indicate what unit, because you own that shares of stock, you're allowed to occupy the unit known as 3G, 1A, whatever it would be, your apartment. You're not purchasing your unit. You do not own it.
So
You do not have a mortgage because mortgage is an instrument. Mortgage is a pledge. That's another thing. There's terminology in the book that addresses myths. For example, you're giving them a security agreement. A mortgage is a pledge to pay a loan, which is your note in a normal transaction. In a co-op, you still have a note. You still sign a document that pledges to secure to pay that note with the security of your stock certificate, but it's not a mortgage. It's called a security agreement. It's the equivalent of a mortgage in a deeded property. But you don't have a deeded property, and you don't have a mortgage, and you don't own your unit. Nobody knows that. And it's like, you guys need to know this.
Okay. Well, is it written in, language that, a 2-year-old can understand? And is it meant as a guide?
It's meant to tell the people, everyday people, in everyday language, what's going on. What happens at your closing, who is that your clothing? What do they do? What's their purpose? And what am I signing? What do my documents mean? That's the key point.
All right, Robert, I got it. I got the point. But I got to tell you, I'm glad I never bought a co-op. I did buy a condo once. And you know what? If you've got that kind of money, go out and buy a house. Don't you think it's a lot less aggravation? Aggravation. Don't you, Rob? Rob is saying, yeah, maybe. I don't know. But when you're in the city, it's either a co-op or a condo. So if you don't know what it is, you should pick up a copy of Robert's book. All right, so this guy, this next author, I caught up with him riding a tadpole. Literally, he's answering his phone while he's riding a tadpole. That's like one of those recumbent bikes. He had just finished doing 18 miles, and he was riding many more miles, but stopped long enough to talk to me about his book called Hoosier Heaven, which means he's from Indiana, right? Okay. So this book is about your spiritual journey. Am I right, Dave? And possibly getting a chip off your shoulder. That's what you told me. So explain that.
In a nutshell, when I was 20 or 21, I had a near fatal car accident. After getting out of the hospital, I was in a coma for a couple of weeks, got out of the hospital, sitting on the bed, happy as hell to be alive. And I was sitting there at that time, that was in the mid-70s, the end of the later 70s. I had a friend that was into transcendental meditation. I couldn't get that. It just didn't work for me. So I went into this. I sat on my bed, and I thought, damn it, I want to just know what life feels like. I had awareness into the essence of my presence and went down my body and then back up my body. And I did this night after night. A lot of times I fell asleep doing it. My mental awareness in line with my physical presence. Siddhartha calls that the right effort with the right awareness.
Okay.
And that is the middle of Siddhartha's Eightfold Way pathway to heaven. And he treats that in 3 stages. You self-train yourself morally and ethically. So you clean your brain up. You don't feel guilty about stuff. You're treating life as good as you can. That allows, and that's where the Bible, that's where religious theology stops. The 10 Commandments, they tell you what to do, what not to do. They don't tell you why or why not. Siddhartha goes on to tell you then, your mind is calm, you can train mind control, okay? And that takes the right effort and the right awareness to generate the right concentration. Now that's what I discovered myself in my bed, not attaching it to Siddhartha or any sort of spiritual or religious theology. And when I was 45 years old, I was hearing the tail end of a commercial, and they were describing a book, and the description modeled what I had done on that bed. And I thought about it, and after a day or two, I remembered, and it came to me what it was that bell, that description was ringing. And I thought, well, should I sue them? Should I sue Buddhists for, copyright or something? I probably should. That probably wouldn't work. Because it was exactly the same thing. So that kicked up my interest. I got that book, The Art of Living, and read it several times. It is so packed with wisdom and information, every sentence, every word. Whereas my book is, 800-900 pages long. Really, my book approaches the same end point from different points of view. And I think it's really interesting. And it's a great precursor for what I'm writing now. It's exactly the same thing.
It's about the journey. It's about a spiritual journey, your spiritual journey.
Yes, to finish what I started rambling about, Siddhartha goes into the 3rd stage. After you get the right concentration, you're in the right awareness. Where you are is where I wanted to be sitting on that bed. You are in the place where life is manifesting itself. Life's purpling. It's a coming and going sensation you have no control over. And there's all kinds of wisdom in that. You have no control over that, so you don't want to try and control the present moment. You can't grab a hold of things. Life is not continual. When you think life is continual, you come up with ideas or things you come up with ideas about the presence of things that you can become attached to, you can crave. That's the root of human suffering. And with this right concentration, Siddhartha goes on to say, well, this is how you train your wisdom. And this is the wisdom that populates the branches of the tree of life. because you're getting it through the experience you're culminating and assimilating from inside yourself, from your self-knowledge. And my book, Hoosier Heaven, discusses this journey from the point of view of an average, above average, intelligent Hoosier that's experienced it.
Okay.
And, that's really all it's about.
All right, Dave. Some very, very deep thinking going on in this book. I know it's going to be really interesting to see what you come up with in that second book. But all I can say is it's the journey, not the destination. Am I right? I'm absolutely right. Of course, I'm absolutely right. Speaking of destination, I have a date with my computer. I got to do some online shopping. I'm so behind, man. How about you, Rob? No? No shopping? Wait a minute. When's Hanukkah? I keep talking about Christmas. It's early this year, and you don't have to go shopping? You should go shopping. You should buy your wife something. Anyway, that's all we do, us Christians. We shop till we drop. One day I am going to write a book. But right now I have to do a shopping list. So cookies to bake, parties to go to, and more authors to talk to next week when you come back for another edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Same place, same time. 710 WOR. Have a great weekend.
Have you written a book and want to get it published? Then now's the time to call Page Publishing at 800-204-6099 and do it immediately. You see, they're looking for authors of all types of books. And unlike most publishers, Page Publishing will take the time to review most of the books submitted to them. And they'll even give you their feedback. And if they like what they read, Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, the Apple iTunes Store, and other outlets. They'll handle everything. Copyright protection, printing, cover art, publicity, and editing. So if you've written a novel, a children's book, a cookbook, inspirational work, a book of poetry, or biography, and want to get it published, then you need to call Page Publishing and do it immediately. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. Your road to fame and fortune could very well start with this simple phone call. For your free author submission kit, call Page Publishing at 800-204